So this is the Examiner's Report, January 2011, Section A, Analysing Speech. If you have a look at the text, a lot of these comments are going to make a lot more sense. So candidates generally seem to find both texts accessible and were able to offer a fair range of relevant comments on the task set. Most were able to identify several features and comment on them, but there were still some candidates who wrote very generalised responses to the question and only broadly related their comments to specific details. Specific details are key to this question. Everything must be specific to a word or a phrase or an utterance or an aspect of the structure of the speech and relate it to context, so the specific context given. There is still work to be done to stress the importance of identifying specific points, giving an example of each, and then commenting on, analysing, evaluating effects created. In order to achieve marks, candidates must analyse language, not simply spot features. It is also important that they avoid combining several features such as adjectives, adverbs, and personal pronouns are used here, followed by a quotation that contains the features mentioned. So do one technique, find a quote for it, a single word, a short phrase, and then move on to the next example. Candidates need to demonstrate to examiners that they know terminology and can use it accurately, rather than adopt a blanket approach and hope the examiner can deduce their meaning. Overall, there was a broadly sound use of terminology for word classes, although some muddled adverbs and adjectives, and as ever there was confusion over the use of ellipsis and elision, and over the correct application of low or high frequency lexis. Some candidates wasted opportunities to make relevant comments by referring to what is not there in the respective texts, and there is still a tendency to be a relatively small number of candidates to refer to Grice's maxims or Labov without making meaningful links to the details within the text. Again, as I've mentioned before in other videos, Grice and Labov you will not come across. They are language features only and are not used in the LitLang exam. So if you see them on any other revision website, please do not pay any attention to them. I haven't just left them out when I've been teaching you. Okay, so ellipsis, elision. Make sure you revise the difference between those. Use the terminology resources on the website and make sure that you can spot them and identify them in a different way. Adverbs and adjectives, check out the word classes sheet from LO1. It's in the revision box in the classroom and on the website, and this should help you identify different word classes if you're going down that route. It is also worth noting that some candidates become so involved in trying to identify the dominant speaker or discussing the spontaneous speech as some kind of power struggle that they fail to identify the key features of the interaction. Again, this has been mentioned before, consider dominance only in one paragraph. It doesn't need to be referenced throughout. It's not likely to be relevant to every point you're making about terminology, likely only to be relevant to the ones where you're talking about turn-taking or interruptions and kind of the structure of the speech with dominance. Only rarely are these references successful or helpful in helping candidates establish points about attitudes or context within speech interactions. Many candidates also spend far too much time at the beginning of their answers writing in general terms about context, audience and purpose, or by simply describing what the texts are about, sometimes even repeating information given in the question. Time is precious in the exam and will be far better utilised by candidates starting their detailed comparative analysis as soon as possible. Broad and generalised comments attract few marks. An introduction is important, but it does need to be concise and brief and not be repetitive. So I've done an example introduction for you on my spontaneous language video scribe video. So if you take a look at that, it's got an example of what it should look like, and then you can get straight into your analysis. There were relatively few really integrated analyses, combining thoughtful comments on features linked to attitude and context in a way which threw light on how speech or language works, and there was some imbalance in the coverage of the text. Candidates sometimes wrote more fully on text A, but struggled to identify key features of text B. However, some candidates did succeed in producing detailed, perceptive, comparative analyses dealing fully with both texts. That's what you're aiming for. Detailed, perceptive, comparative. So text A and text B very evenly. Plenty of detailed analysis with single words or phrases. There were also some misreadings sometimes related to the gender of Giles Brandreth or to the relationship between Millie and her mother, with some seeing a decided lack of interest in the mother's response to Millie's enthusiasm. Overall, though, more able candidates showed a sophisticated grasp of features of speech and were able to integrate their comparisons to great effect. Analysis of attitudes in these responses was thoughtful and detailed. Weaker candidates were at least able to identify a range of features even if their ability to comment on effects was limited.